Okay, this is a video of a hardwood floor project, and it has to do with my upstairs hall. Okay, the upstairs hall, I'm putting in a hardwood floor. I had previously put in a hardwood floor in all the bedrooms that go off this hall. This hall is what I would call Grand Central Station because it's got 6 doorways and 1 stairway. So there's a lot of interface with all the various things. The stairs, the tile in the bathroom, and then the bedrooms. Now, on the bedrooms, all of the wood is running in the same direction, with the exception of one room. When I checked the joists in that room, this one, they were actually running in this direction. Don't ask me why, I'm not sure. I was expecting them all to run in the same direction. I was expecting the joists to run out this way. But when I actually looked for the joist pattern, I saw them running in this direction in this room. So I always lay the hardwood floor at 90 degrees to the joist. Okay. I maybe didn't have to do that because it does have 5/8 inch plywood underneath it, but that's what I did anyway because I wanted the floor to be as firm as I could get it, stiff. And when I did all of these rooms, I did them all at different times. I had to empty out the contents of one room in order to work on one. So I didn't want to do all of this continuous. I wanted to do them one at a time. So I got this idea that I would have to use thresholds at each spot in order to do the interface with them. And you can see here's where I'm going to have a threshold piece that's going to go over this. And so that's going to hide all that. Okay, that was my general approach. Here's the threshold piece that I bought to use. It looks like that. And it will basically just fit in there. And then I'll just nail that down in. And that's fine. This threshold piece is quite expensive. For 6 feet, it's like $45. And one of them will cover 2 of these rooms because it's almost 3 feet across. So for the other 2, I noticed I was actually able to buy some unfinished. This only came out like less than $20, less than half the price. So this one I'm just going to put the polyurethane on it after I put it in. I didn't realize I could have got it unfinished when I bought that. I wouldn't have paid such a high price for that. On the bathroom, it's a different type of a threshold piece. It's going to be a transition piece that's going to fit on there. And that's also expensive, but maybe I could have got that unfinished too. I didn't check. I'm going to have to still buy that for this, so I will check that. Now, this used to be wall-to-wall carpeting, and the stairs were wall-to-wall carpeting. I took off all the wall-to-wall carpeting, and I'm going to have to do these stairs later. But right now, I'm just worrying about the hall. My approach was to just lay 3/4 inch hardwood on top of the plywood deck. Okay. Now, it turns out that when I measured the height of each of these steps, this top one was already short by about 1 inch. So by adding this on top, it actually does not disrupt the uniformity of the steps. It actually makes them even more uniform than they were before it had it. And when I go about to replace these, my plan will probably be to take these off rather than to put something on top of them when I go to do the treads, okay? But that's a separate story. Now, my objective on doing this was to start my reference line for all of this hardwood. See, I've got so many doors here that I can't possibly make all of this line up perfectly. So this was going to be my reference line because I felt that it's most important to get this right. Okay, so on this project, I decided that I would just use the regular hardwood, and I would buy a roundover bit. So I got this roundover bit. It's a 3/8 inch roundover bit. And with that, I can make a bullnose. It's an edge forming bit. So it's relatively easy to use. because it's got that little thing on it. And before I put the hardwood down, I round over one side, then I turn it over and round over the other side, and then I have a bullnose. That seemed to come out okay. I already put some polyurethane on that, and it seems to match up with that pretty good. Now, one mistake I made here was I measured this so that I hit about 1 inch of protrusion of the bullnose over the plywood deck, the subfloor. And then I put that on like that. But what I didn't do was, I could have done that, and at the same time, just by adjusting this a teeny bit, I could have also made that parallel to the wall. And I didn't make it parallel to the wall. So as a result, it's slightly off. And so what happens is, I have to, when I rip the boards, I have to either use short boards and rip them to a different thickness, or if it's a longer board, I actually have to cut it on a line that's not perfectly straight or parallel to the other edge. And that's just a little bit of an inconvenience. So over here, for example, you'll see I ripped a short board, then I ripped another short board a little bit longer, then I ripped another short board a little bit longer. Okay, it's not the end of the world, okay, but it's a little bit extra work. I could have drawn the reference line here just by straightening this out so it would parallel to this wall, and it might have come out parallel to the other wall. Sometimes on a room, the two opposite walls are not parallel anyway, and you do end up having sometimes to rip the wood to different widths, but normally on each individual piece it's still straight, and normally you don't have to specifically choose small pieces intentionally in order to do it. You normally wouldn't put 3 small pieces next to each other like that, okay? But the only person that's ever going to notice that is going to be me. Nobody else is ever going to notice that. Okay, so now, just to get into some of the details, I did get myself into a bit of a jam on some of these things. So if this is my first piece, so this is has to be face nailed, okay? So I face nailed it. I'm going to fill these, but I haven't filled them yet. And then this next line, this next board here is my reference board, okay? Also face nailed, okay? Now, by the time I get down to here, the next board in is now working its way into the previously floored room, and I want to get this board in actually in the opposite direction, because I want to be able to not to have to face nail this, because I have an opening in this direction, and I want to use my hammer to tongue nail this on this side. So I, in this case, used a reversing strip. Here, it might be a little bit easier to see over here. So when I'm putting in, this was my reference, my first course. When I put this one in, I'm actually nailing this in the opposite direction on the other side of this, because I've used a reversing strip on this one. And the rest of the room, the hammer's going to go the other way. Naturally, it's going to move out like that. Okay. Now, by using that reversing strip, the problem with that, one problem with that is with the reversing strip, I could end up with a problem where I don't end up with this lined up. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, this one actually is not reversed. Okay, so this one I didn't reverse. I actually pushed this in this direction. It's laid out the same way. And I actually used the face nail into not the tongue on that one. I actually put it into the groove side on this one. You can see that's the groove side. That's the groove side. I actually put a nail down on the groove side of this one. And that means that I couldn't put a tongue into that. This one does not have a tongue in it. This one is actually placed with the tongue on this side, and the groove is on this side. This is a groove against a groove, and there's actually no reversing strip in there because I couldn't put a reversing strip in once I had put the nails through the tongue, through the groove on this side. It still came out okay, even though this is just. In other words, this one is tight. It's tight. These boards were nice and straight, and I didn't run into a problem on that. Yeah, so anyway, that's maybe a little bit hard to understand, but what happens is when you have undercuts on these thresholds, it's very easy to more or less paint yourself into a corner with hardwood. That is, to get yourself into a situation where you can't complete the job the way you want to because the boards won't fit in because you didn't start in the right order. So, for example, on this one, notice how this piece here just comes up to the edge of that jamb. And on the other side, it just comes up to the edge of that jamb. The reason for that was, if it was any longer than that, I couldn't have gotten it in because I had already nailed down my reference board before positioning this one. And I had to more or less almost kind of wedge that in and cut it just to the right length. And by cutting it just to the right length, I'm not guaranteed of being able to have a tongue and groove on both sides of that. In this case, I think I actually might have been lucky enough to actually select a board which was almost exactly the width of this, and actually fit it in, okay? Which was, I would say, a little bit lucky. Now, something that I ran into here was I had to use a short piece here, and the reason is because I wanted to, when it came to this location, I wanted to be able to use the tongue and groove to fit in this miter piece, okay? I wanted that to fit in there nice and tight, okay? And in order to do that, I needed the groove on this side, but I have a reversing strip in there. I think I do. No, I don't actually. Yeah. Tongue is faced on this direction. But when I went to do this board here, I had the tongue facing on this direction because I wanted to use the nailer going into the tongue of it. So this particular block doesn't have a tongue and a groove on both sides because I actually changed direction on here. So this is just an example of these adjustments I made because I didn't have planned out every single board pre-placed before nailing down my reference so that they would all slide into place. This is what I would call almost a jewel box construction, and you'll see it over here a little bit easier because this is still a work in progress. So in working on this threshold, the way this is going to work, this piece has already been positioned but not nailed before I nailed in this piece. If I had nailed this piece in, there's no way I would have been able to get this piece in, okay? Now I'm going to be able to slide this piece down like this. I then will be able to nail it. And then I'm going to actually be able to slide in this other piece in this direction because based on its width, I know ahead of time that it will actually fit underneath here and slide in and actually fit down in here. If I hadn't dry fit this, and I didn't know that this would make clearance, then I could have painted myself into a corner here too. In other words, these pieces have to go in a certain order. And when they're all done, I can't pull this in tight enough right here. Yeah, I need the hammer to pull it in. But the idea on this is, after these are all in, then I have undercut this jamb so that this transition piece will fit over it. So I've worked this particular threshold. I don't think I screwed it up, because I think I dry fit all of these pieces before actually starting to nail them. So this one should actually fit okay. On this closet, I don't think I'm going to have a problem, because there are no special considerations. And I think, and I have access from both directions. I'm working in both directions. My problem on the other ones was I had a finished area on one side, and I was trying to finish an area, and as you converge on the door jamb and you need to go under it, if you don't have the pieces pre-positioned and pre-cut so that you know that you have them at the right length and available, you could get yourself into a little bit of trouble. Okay, so this I know has been kind of a little bit long and a little bit rambling, potentially. But I wanted to include some of that just to show you a little bit of the kind of trouble you can get into. For example, is I want to be able to put in this threshold strip, and I want to be able to fit it undercut right there. Okay, and I have a piece here that's cut exactly to that length. But what you'll notice is it can't go in. In other words, because of the dimensional requirements, it can't slide in there because of this protrusion of this little tongue on the bottom. In essence, this is an example where there's no way to get this in. Now, I know that the way that I can get it in is by shaving off that tongue on one side, and then I'll actually be able to just force that under. Okay, technically this piece will not fit dimensionally into this gap. But I'm still, so I just have to make a little fine adjustments in order to force it in, which is what I did in this one. This isn't nailed in place, but I'll be able to do that. And I'll run into the exact same situation here. Okay, but I couldn't put this in first. I couldn't put it in first in that location. And the reason is because this one I was able to put in first, and then I could slide the boards under it. But as I worked all the way to the opposite side, I need to be able to pull these in tight up against the next board to make the joints tight. And I can't do that if that's in place. So I couldn't put this in first. This has to go in afterwards. And that means I will have to make an adjustment on the tongue in order to force it under, in order to get the undercut. So when you undercut a doorway like this, it does make it more difficult to fit all the pieces in, and it requires extra planning. But once that is done, I think it will make it a little bit more satisfying, because I think it'll look a little bit better that way. Okay, a lot in here. Thanks, bye.